For decades, Hollywood painted Audie Murphy as the perfect American hero, a legendary soldier turned silver screen icon, a man whose courage in World War II became the backbone of his fame. But behind the medals, the movie posters, and the carefully sculpted public image, Murphy carried truths that no one in the industry wanted to hear. In his final years, he tried to speak, not about glamour, not about his legendary roles, but about the parts of Hollywood most people never see. The shadows behind the spotlight, and the secrets buried deep beneath fame and fortune. He wasn't trying to ruin the industry. He wasn't trying to start controversy. He was trying to warn people about the exploitation he witnessed, about the way young talent was chewed up and discarded, about the darkness that hides behind red carpets and magazine covers. And above all, he spoke about the unseen wounds, not just from war, but from the pressure to pretend that pain doesn't exist in a world built on illusion. Many dismissed his words, thinking they were just the echoes of a soldier haunted by war. Others whispered that he knew too much, that he had seen too much. And then he was gone, a tragic end to a man who had survived the unimaginable, only to be silenced by time and ignored warnings. Today, as new stories surface and old secrets crack open, people are finally beginning to understand what Audie Murphy tried to say. He didn't just fight on the battlefield, he fought in Hollywood too. And the truth he left behind might be even more shocking than the war that made him a legend. When Audie Murphy returned from war, America embraced him as the embodiment of courage. He was the most decorated U.S. soldier of World War II, a man who charged through fire, who pulled wounded comrades to safety, and who stood alone against waves of enemy soldiers when everyone else had fallen. His face appeared on magazine covers, his story ran in newspapers across the country, and Hollywood rushed to open its gates for him. To the world, he was invincible, a walking symbol of bravery and patriotism. But symbols are smooth and polished. Real men are not, and beneath the medals pinned to his chest lived a soldier still fighting battles no one else could see. Hollywood thought it was welcoming a hero. Instead, it had unknowingly invited a haunted warrior into a world obsessed with glamour, where every weakness was hidden and every shadow was painted over with bright lights. At first, Murphy tried to adapt. He learned lines, practiced for the camera, smiled on command, and shook hands with powerful studio heads who promised to take care of him. He was grateful, or at least he tried to be. But the battlefield had followed him home. He woke in the middle of the night, sweating, shaking, reliving explosions and screams. The quiet of a film set often felt louder than gunfire. In crowds, he saw danger. In silence, he heard ghosts. Yet Hollywood didn't ask questions. It rarely does. Studios wanted the image, not the man. They wanted the war hero who made headlines, not the soldier who carried invisible wounds. Murphy learned quickly that showing pain was not part of the script. So he hid it. He pushed through the trauma, hoping the cameras would drown the memories. He worked tirelessly, not because he loved the spotlight, but because movement, any movement, kept the nightmares from consuming him. Fame wasn't his dream. It was a distraction, a survival tactic. But Hollywood was not built for men like Audie Murphy. It was a world where vulnerabilities were dangerous, where sincerity could be mistaken for weakness, and where kindness was often preyed upon. Murphy saw actors pressured, manipulated, and abandoned once the studio lights dimmed. He saw young talents promised the world only to be used and discarded when they no longer fit the mold. He watched as the industry shaped lives like clay, molding them for profit, not protection. He admired many of the artists he worked beside, the quiet geniuses, the forgotten performers, the ones who struggled silently. But he also saw a darker machinery turning behind the scenes. Hollywood had rescued him from the battlefield. Yes, but it had marched him into a different kind of war, one fought not with bullets but with contracts, secrets, and the constant pressure to remain larger than life. A man who had earned every ounce of his honor in the dirt and fire of Europe now had to navigate a world where honor was often traded away for fame. Murphy was polite, respectful, and humble, but he was no fool. He saw that Hollywood power could lift people to glory or crush them without remorse. He recognized how easily truth could be rewritten and how quickly the crowd could turn. He knew how fragile reputations were here, and how important silence could be. In war, silence meant survival. In Hollywood, it meant obedience. There were moments when he tried to speak honestly, about trauma, about the struggles returning soldiers faced, about the pressure to appear perfect when life was anything but. Sometimes people listened. More often, they smiled politely and changed the subject. To many, he was just a decoration, a patriotic symbol, a face on a poster. They wanted bravery without burden, heroism without humanity, but Murphy carried both. And as the years went on, he realized that the battles he fought now were far more subtle, and in some ways more frightening, than those he faced overseas. He had survived war, but could he survive a world that demanded silence in exchange for survival? Hollywood had welcomed a hero. It did not expect a truth-teller, and slowly, Audie Murphy began to understand. The hardest fight of his life might not have taken place on the fields of Europe, but in the glittering shadows of Hollywood itself. As Audie Murphy settled deeper into Hollywood life, the applause never truly filled the silence inside him. Fame brings noise but not peace. Cameras flashed, scripts arrived, and fans gathered just to catch a glimpse of the war hero turned movie star. On the outside, he looked like a man who had conquered life twice, once on the battlefield, and now on the silver screen. But inside, he fought a battle no medal could prepare him for. In the quiet spaces between film takes, when the lights dimmed and the set emptied, his mind returned to Europe, to the trenches, to the snow-stained red, to the voices of soldiers who never came home. Hollywood celebrated his heroism, but it did not understand the price of it. Trauma is not removed by applause. Pain doesn't fade under spotlights. Instead, it hides, waiting for the silence to return so it can speak again. Murphy's colleagues respected him, yet few truly knew him. He was polite, hard-working, even charming when he needed to be. But there was always a distance in his eyes, as if part of him was still standing on a battlefield thousands of miles away. Directors admired his discipline. Co-stars admired his humility. But the industry admired his image the most, a perfect American story they could sell again and again. Still, Murphy could see beyond the glamour. He noticed the broken smiles behind closed doors, the actors who numbed themselves with alcohol because they couldn't bear the pressure, the ones who felt trapped by the need to remain flawless on screen. He knew addiction, not because of Hollywood, but because pain has a way of seeking escape. His struggle with sleepless nights led him down dark paths, pills for rest, then pills for calm, and then pills simply to function. Hollywood did not judge him, not openly, but it also did not help him. Here, suffering was a private affair, something handled quietly, alone, hidden from the cameras that demanded perfection. Murphy wasn't the only one hurting. He saw rising stars crumble under expectations, promising talents disappear after one wrong move, artists destroyed by whispers and rumors. Studios protected reputations, not people. They polished images while souls cracked underneath. And as Murphy tried to navigate his inner war, he realized something even more painful. The battlefield had rules: honor, duty, loyalty. Hollywood had none. Here, friendships could vanish with one bad headline. Loyalty lasted only as long as profit did. A soldier who once trusted his life to the man beside him now entered a world where trust was currency and betrayal was entertainment. The more he saw, the more uneasy he became. Not because he hated Hollywood, but because he feared what it could do to those who came after him. Young actors with dreams in their eyes were welcomed with smiles, contracts, and promises. Too many would learn what Murphy already knew. Glory can be a cage, and fame can be its lock. Yet through it all, Murphy never became bitter. He carried dignity like armor, trying to balance the battlefield in his memory with the battle of reputation and pressure around him. Some nights, he would sit alone, going through letters from soldiers who thanked him for speaking out about PTSD, long before the world had a name for it. He knew he had a voice, but every time he tried to warn others about the hidden price of fame, the industry politely shifted the conversation away. Hollywood prided itself on fantasy. Reality was bad for business. Still, he whispered truths when he could. To friends, to veterans, to anyone willing to listen. His message was simple, yet heavy with experience. Fame isn't freedom. And sometimes, survival isn't celebrated. It's quietly endured. Audie Murphy had survived war. But now he faced an enemy he could not shoot, one that lived in silence, in memory, in pressure, in polished lies. And this time, the world wasn't cheering him on. It wasn't even paying attention. Hollywood prides itself on illusion, grand sets, flawless faces, stories that glow brighter than reality ever could. But the longer Audie Murphy lived within its gates, the more he understood that behind every shining success, there was a shadow. Behind every rising star, there was a contract waiting to shape them. And behind every smiling photograph, there was often a cost that no one outside the studio walls would ever know. To the public, Hollywood was glamour, hope, and magic. To Murphy, a man who had seen life and death laid bare on real battlefields, it became something else entirely, a system built not on truth, but on control. He watched as powerful executives determined the fate of young actors' careers with a single phone call. He saw individuals praised one moment and discarded the next when they no longer fit the image or narrative the studios needed. The battlefield rewarded bravery and sacrifice. Hollywood rewarded obedience and silence. There were whispers Murphy heard but never repeated, promises made behind closed doors, careers traded for favors, reputations destroyed not because of talent, but because someone in power wanted them gone. He realized quickly that in this world, honesty was dangerous. People did not openly speak of injustice or abuse of power. They exchanged warnings in hushed voices, careful to protect themselves while still offering quiet warnings to those they cared about. Murphy never named names. He didn't need to. The truth wasn't in individuals. It was in the culture, the atmosphere, the fear that hovered behind the elegance. He witnessed actors pressured into roles they despised, forced to reshape their personalities or hide parts of their identity just to stay employable. Some were told who to date, how to behave, what to say, and what not to speak of. The price of stardom wasn't simply talent and effort, but compliance. It didn't matter if they were brilliant. If they didn't fit Hollywood's mold, they were remade or replaced. Murphy had seen young soldiers break under the weight of war, but here he watched young performers crumble under the weight of perfection. What startled him most wasn't the cruelty. He had seen the worst of humanity in battle, but the indifference. In war, suffering was inevitable, but it was acknowledged. Here, suffering was silent, hidden beneath designer suits and glittering lights, ignored in the name of entertainment. People cried quietly, drank quietly, hurt quietly. Their pain did not matter as long as the camera captured beauty. Murphy's military instinct told him to protect, to speak up, to warn others. When he saw new actors come in, starry-eyed and eager, he would sometimes pull them aside subtly, offering gentle advice. Don't lose yourself. Remember who you are. Fame isn't worth your soul, some listened. Many didn't, until it was too late. He knew his words were not always welcome. Hollywood wasn't fond of truth-tellers. Truth disrupted illusion, and illusion was the product they sold best. But Murphy couldn't help it. He was a soldier trained to recognize threats, even when they wore suits and smiled politely. The quiet corruption, the emotional manipulation, the sacrifices demanded in the name of success, these things weighed on him. He once said privately that war had injured his body and mind, but Hollywood threatened to take his spirit. Still, he carried himself with dignity. He refused to become bitter, and he refused to expose individuals simply for shock value. But the life he lived, the things he saw, the silent warnings he tried to give, they all pointed to one truth. The real danger wasn't one person or one scandal. It was the system, the machine, the culture that valued fame so fiercely it would swallow anything, even the humanity of those who fed it. And so Murphy began to speak more openly, gently but firmly, telling interviewers and friends alike that fame wasn't salvation. It was another battlefield. One where the enemies were invisible and the wounds were harder to show. He wasn't trying to destroy Hollywood. He was trying to save the souls still walking into it. In his final years, Audie Murphy carried himself with a quiet gravity. The world still called him a hero, but he no longer chased applause, nor did he try to belong to an industry that had never truly understood him. His life had been lived in two extremes, the violent honesty of war and the polished illusion of Hollywood. And he had survived both, but not without scars. And as time passed, he felt a responsibility burning inside him, not to expose or destroy, but to warn, to tell the truth before time silenced him. He spoke softly, not dramatically. Murphy was not a man who exaggerated or sensationalized. The battlefield had taught him the value of plain truth. In interviews, he would mention the pressures young actors faced, the emotional cost of fame, the loneliness behind success. He never pointed fingers. He didn't need to. His tone alone revealed he had seen deeper than others dared to look. Fame is a burden, he once confided. It doesn't fill the empty spaces. It makes them louder. Those close to him knew he struggled with nightmares, anxiety, and the weight of memory. But they also knew he never surrendered to bitterness. Even when Hollywood misunderstood him, even when his advocacy for veterans was dismissed as dwelling on the past, he stayed true to his nature, protective, loyal, honest. He warned of a world where image mattered more than truth, where fragile souls were set up to break under the spotlight's heat. Many thought he was simply tired, haunted. Others listened, quietly, thoughtfully, and remembered. Then suddenly he was gone. A tragic plane crash in 1971 ended the life of a man who had already survived enough danger for 10 lifetimes. America mourned the war hero, the actor, the patriot. Hollywood offered tributes and flowers, praising his bravery and charm. But very few spoke of the truths he tried to whisper before he left. The warnings about the emotional battlefield hidden behind stardom, the vulnerability that fame disguises, the quiet desperation of those who give their lives to entertain a world that forgets them when the lights dim. And yet, time has a way of revealing what silence once buried. Today, decades later, new generations of actors have spoken out about the pressures Murphy tried to expose: mental health struggles, identity suppression, career manipulation, quiet breakdowns behind glamorous facades. The industry still sparkles, but its shadows are harder to ignore. People no longer believe every smiling photograph or perfect interview. More voices now speak about the price of fame, and without knowing it, they echo the warnings of a soldier who saw the truth long before most dared to acknowledge it. Audie Murphy is remembered for his courage on the battlefield, for rescuing comrades under fire, for risking his life again and again with fearless resolve. But perhaps one of his greatest acts of bravery came later, when he tried to speak about invisible wounds in a world not ready to listen. When he dared to say that pain doesn't disappear with applause, that heroes break too, that surviving isn't always glamorous. He never sought sympathy. He never sought headlines. He simply wanted people to see what he had seen, that even in a city built on dreams, some battles are fought alone. And some truths are whispered because shouting them would destroy careers. And now, with the benefit of time, the world understands a little more. Murphy wasn't bitter. He was early. He wasn't troubled. He was aware. He wasn't trying to warn us for attention. He was trying to protect those who would follow him into a glittering battlefield. He died before the world was ready to hear him. But now, his warnings rise louder than ever, and his legacy stretches beyond medals and movies. Audie Murphy didn't just fight for his country. He fought for the truth. And though he is gone, his voice still echoes, reminding us that even legends need saving too.